Right, who have I not told? Oh. Are you all set for a beverage and the ilk?
Yes, I am, and I have to get better at unmuting myself. I'm practicing.
God, it's anyone who's ever had to play FPSs with push to talk. We know that struggle. We know that struggle well.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
So, first to say hello to my wonderful people: Tofu, Compliment Cap, Dr. Pepper Pepsi Pun Guy, and Dorcas. What ho, friends? What ho? Come on in, take a seat. Get your beverages and charge your questions, because I've got a guest today. And I'm very excited about this. I mean, I've totally been chill and calm and nonchalant about it all. Totally.
Look at that, Jeffrey. Another fine day.
Dr. Pepper's asking why we have fingernails. That's not a good question. So, Kate's currently based out of a coffee shop, answering our questions and calls. So, please bear with us all while we deal with things in the background, push to talk, and other such elements. Fuzzki, what ho! Hello and welcome. Fuzzki, have we met? And it is indeed the Kate Edwards. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, Sagathan saying, what ho! I am frigging hyped for this guest. Before we get into the weeds of stuff, I guess I should address the how Will hurt his hand and why it's now swollen. Yesterday it kind of resembled William Birkin's arm from the original Resident Evil 2, so yeah. I hit something very hard while I was on the way home from the pub like a fool, so no sympathy for self-inflicted wounds. Oh, Fuzzki of Flamebait. What ho, friend? So Kate, Fuzzki from Flamebait Games, they recently released an amazing title called Varlet Swing, which I am enamored with.
Very cool.
It's like a high-speed physics puzzler.
Awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Right. So come on in, one and all. Come on in. Get everyone all set up and ready. I've got mine ready to go. I just don't want to not churn through it. And I don't want to brag or anything. And Kate, I apologise for inviting you onto my show and then making it about me. But
well, it's your show, so that's fine.
Thank you. I have a packet of hobnobs. Yeah, I'm not fecking around. I found an English import store in Redmond on Sunday, and not spending all of my money there was a great challenge. I came away with some hobnobs and some chewits, so I'm fine.
I know that store well.
There's also the most atypical English pub attached to it, which I still don't know how I feel about that.
I don't go there, but I know what you mean. It's a little too much for me.
Yes, but not in an Elephant and Castle kind of way. In an actual, like, this looks like someone stole a pub from one of the crappier parts of London and dropped it in.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I feel. So.
So Gilbot's baking with a friend. She wants to know you're cute. Well, there you go, Kate. You're getting compliments already. And
oh, it's very nice.
We haven't even discussed your badass cosplay yet. But yes. So everybody, we are going to do proper introductions and get into the weeds in about 6 minutes or so. So if you want to get yourself a cup of tea, a beverage, start thinking of some good questions. We've got a stonkingly awesome guest today, and you'll don't know how excited I've been about this one. All right. So yeah. So just staying as relatively chill. Though I don't know if you have the same problem, Kate, but I'm suffering from post-event truncation of time at the moment.
Since I visit so many events and speak at so many, I'm kind of suffering from that on a constant basis.
Oh,
so yeah,
God.
I know this feeling.
It's when people say, "Oh, I haven't seen you since X," and you can't in your mind work out how long ago that was.
Oh, it's bad. I mean, I was even thinking this morning about something, a place where I was and something that I did 3 months ago, and then I basically laughed out loud because I realized that was only 3 months ago.
Oh,
It
God.
feels like it was 5 years ago already.
I mean, I don't miss touring all the time. I miss it a little bit, but it's like I was trying to tell someone how long it had been since I last saw you before PAX, and I'm like, PAX felt like it was 20 years long and about 5 minutes ago. So I'm still...
Yeah, pretty much. And yet it was, what, only 3 weeks ago?
Yeah. It feels like, a million years. Right. Let me just say some more highs and hellos. So, Gilbot, DJ Alternative, Greenfire, what ho, friends? Come on in. Find yourself space. You'll know how it works. As I've said, and will say multiple times, we have a stonkingly badass guest with us today. So, if you've got any industry questions that you've been sitting on for a while, now is the time, my friends. Now is the time. What am I not doing? You know, I'm getting that there's something I haven't sorted feeling at the moment. What have I not done? Curses. Oh well, I'm sure it can't be that massive. A splash cut to like a oven on fire or something. Right. And now chat are discussing the Great British Bake Off. Ah, it's problematic. Wait a heckin' second. Meebot's being an ass, of course. Of course. Right. So, actually, Kate, that was one thing I was going to ask, is, like, since you've not had to be IDDA, have you toured more or less since then?
I've actually talked a lot more.
Wow.
It's pretty... I thought that it was going to slow down. I really did. I seriously thought the requests were going to slow down. I thought I was going to travel less. And yet it has been crazier than when I ran the IGDA. I think part of it is because people realize that I'm free. My schedule is a little... Which, I mean, I have to work too, but at least my schedule is my own. And then I think the other thing that they enjoy is now I can say anything I want, and I do. So I think they enjoy my bluntness.
Yes. Like, now... I will admit that as soon as I learnt that you were a person that we could get on this show, I was very, very keen about that one. Because being part of the IGDA must have meant that a certain amount of... I don't want to say constraint, because you've never struck me as a person who's been... Wow, I am really dancing around this. It's nice that you can speak good and plain like Kate. It's right good to have you on shore. Thank you kindly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I even when I ran the IGD, I think I was fairly blunt, but I had to be a little more diplomatic about what I said. And there were certain things I wanted to say, but I couldn't because, I was restrained by a board of directors that wanted me to do and say certain things. And I don't have that problem anymore.
No takesy backsies.
Right, exactly. And so I'm enjoying the freedom of being able to express my very strong opinions about certain things in this industry.
Yes. Well, as I was saying to you in the preamble, like, what I really want to do is talk about a lot of what you do now because it's so unique and so important. I do want to talk about some of your past. I don't want to dwell on it too much because I'm pretty sure you've got stories enough to fill like a week's worth of shows, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean.
We had a long chat on Saturday, myself and the lovely people here, about the more, what should we say, the more dramatic elements that have been dropping this last couple of weeks in the games industry. But I'm sure we'll get to it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we could fill a couple hours with that alone.
Mm-hmm. Though, okay, as of this morning, I'm feeling a little bit, I don't know, I can't claim any credit for it, but the Creative Assembly put out a statement this morning about their female generals that just made me smile so much.
Yes,
I was so happy about that.
Yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see when a company sticks up for their creative vision and stays with it.
All right. Oh, hang on. I'm just giving our Discord bot a kick in its metallic tush. There we go. Right. Okay. So, 10 minutes have passed. If you haven't got yourself a beverage and you ain't ready to roll, then you're a fool and a took. Ladies, gentlemen, and individuals of all persuasions, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you all to Kate Edwards, industry badass and more than one-time actual god of thunder.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So, if you've not heard of Kate, that's understandable. I guess one of the things that struck me before the show was that outside of games industry, you're not as well known as perhaps your achievements should be. But the quick TLDR is definitely that Kate served at Microsoft for a little over a decade?
Yeah, 13 years.
Before going solo and setting up Geography. Geography? Did I get it right?
Yes, you did. It's Geography.
Nailed it! The first time was pronounced something the first time.
Well done.
During said time, Kate has been a huge part of the IGDA and at one point the executive director, no less. So, yeah. I feel woefully underqualified to be the host for the show, but Kate, thank you so much for coming on. Did I miss any cool stuff there? I was doing my very best to do
Oh, there's a lot of other miscellaneous things about me. Maybe that'll come out.
So, yeah, I've known of Kate's work for a while, but I guess just being someone involved with GDC and other such things, it was always an element. I don't think I actually got to meet you until this GDC just gone, though, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the first time we actually had a face-to-face conversation. I've had people say before, like, yeah, I saw you across the hall at a convention, because I'm not hard to miss when I'm 191 centimeters tall.
Yes. You are a titan of industry, which is rad.
That's one way to put it, literally.
So, for those that haven't met you, for those that do not know your tales, wait. There we go. Ah, see, I've got a cool picture of you down the doobly-doo as well. I'm kind of, well, down below me. I'm quite proud of this. So, quick TLDR. What was your role at Microsoft? Let's get that one out of the way.
Okay, so Microsoft. So I was doing my PhD work at the University of Washington in Seattle,
as you do,
where I'm normally based. And when I was working on my PhD, we got a call from Microsoft. They needed a cartographer to work on Encarta Encyclopedia, the first version. This is way back in 1991.
Oh, wow.
And so I went over there and started in early 92 as a contractor, and I thought it was going to be like a 3 or 6 month contract. And
How wrong you were.
How wrong I was, because they kept renewing it and eventually offered me a full-time role as what basically a job description that I wrote called the geopolitical specialist for Microsoft. So basically my job was to help them with all the tricky map issues that can get you banned in different countries.
Yeah.
And that job evolved into a lot of other responsibilities. I eventually created an internal team at Microsoft called Geopolitical Strategy, because nobody was looking at like the political and cultural aspects of the content that was in all Microsoft's products.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about things like certain icon designs and symbol usage and gestures and all that kind of stuff. Even color usage can be sensitive. And but then when the game studio got started, I mean, there was all the PC stuff. So I worked like on all the Age of Empires and Mech Warriors, Asheron's Call, and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the Xbox project got started, and then I ended up working on pretty much every game at Microsoft until I left in 2005. And what I was essentially doing for them is looking at the game content, trying to see if there's anything in there that could be problematic for certain markets. My job is not to tell the creative folks what to do. I mean, their creative vision, and I respect that tremendously. My job is basically trying to make sure that creative vision can be shared by as many cultures as possible. So I'm looking for like that little surgical thing that might cause a problem and see if we might be able to change it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go into any specific examples, but having worked on a historically themed strategy series, sometimes there are things that are horrendously offensive to different cultures that you might overlook. It's not a case of censorship, it's a case of, oh, we didn't realise.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I know I've had criticism, I've had pushback where people say I'm like the political correctness police or something like that. But really, I mean, it's understanding what the adaptation of content is all about. I mean, even in Card Encyclopedia, so an encyclopedia is supposed to be an absolute factual, reference. Well, in the French and Italian versions, we had different heights for Mont Blanc because at the time the governments disagreed on the height of the mountain. So,
wow.
When we go to something like Age of Empires and we had to change history in a couple scenarios because the local government, like Korea in one instance, they said that the version of history that we had in the game is not what really happened. Even though that's what historians tell us happened, but they disagreed. So
I do not envy you in that space, let me tell you.
So we had to basically change history only for the Korean players in order to have the game sold in the Korean market. And, was it worth it? Yeah, it was worth it. I mean, because our market research told us that real-time strategy games were very popular in Korea. And this was 1997. This was a year before StarCraft launched.
Whoa.
And if anyone knows their video game history, you know that StarCraft in Korea was a national phenomenon, and it still is.
Yeah, they're a little bit keen on StarCraft, just a little. Just a little.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Also, Kate, the lovely people of chat are asking, are you able to see their comments?
Yes, I can see your comments.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, so lovely people, we will do questions and answers as we go on in. I will let you know when the floodgates are open, so you've got plenty of time to cook up some real good questions. And
I'm already seeing some really good questions in there. So you just tell me when you want to unleash and answer.
You know what, Kate? If you see a good one, jump on it, because I am exceedingly proud of my little crowd here. They are articulate and they ask good stuff. I haven't seen Rhymes with Moose yet. He's usually a very, very good question-answer asker, but...
Well, there's so a couple of questions there. One I definitely want to address about, does it cover more than just offensive things, also informing developers.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, I when I look at culturalization, I basically look at it in two different ways. There's reactive culturalization, which is basically where you're trying to remove the offensive stuff and basically stop a reaction.
Yeah.
And then there's the proactive kind, where actually we're trying to help developers understand, here's ways you might be able to enhance your game content for specific markets, like adding a little token or adding a character or adding something that makes it more appealing to a certain market that they might be interested in, like Korea or Japan or Saudi Arabia or wherever it might be. You can actually enhance the content either by downloadable content or by default do things in the content that makes it more appealing to certain cultures that you want to target. So that's a big part of the conversation that I have with developers, and really, it's always up to the game creator. I let them decide. I'm the one following their lead. I'm just trying to help guide them on what they may or may not want to do. But I'm never going to tell them I'm not going to tell them that their creative vision is incorrect. I'm going to tell them whether or not it's going to work, and I'll suggest things that might be, actually make it better for certain markets.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to paraphrase, but I think there's more. It's not ignorance that comes from developers. It's more like a knowledge blind spot. They don't know enough to know they're ignorant in certain spheres. So sorry, a teeny tiny raid there. Hello, Stu.
And I think but there is ignorance too. Let's face it.
Yes.
there's and the worst kind is what I would call willful ignorance, where people, they tend to know, but they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other story. But in terms, yeah.
No, I was going to say. So continuing on. So you would then go on to not only do this for Microsoft, but set up what we're looking at the moment, Geography, which is the same thing, but as an independent consultancy. Am I correct?
That's right. So I left Microsoft in 2005 with the intent of working primarily in the game industry. Why I joined the IGDA in 2004.
Yeah.
Because I knew I wanted to connect and be closer to the game industry. So, I wanted to basically focus most of my consulting work in games because that's what I love most. Even though even today, I would say on an average basis, I would say about a third of my work is non-games. It's related to all kinds of other stuff, including, since I still do like hardcore geopolitical cartographic consulting.
Oh wow!
For different companies.
That's awesome. I can tell you that the entire country of New Zealand will absolutely appreciate you.
Yeah. I make sure that they're not left off maps, things like that.
There was, I kid you not, my local one of my local bars in New Zealand when I was out there had a world map in the toilets, which missed New Zealand.
Oh, that's a shame. That's too bad.
Had been drawn on with biro. So that does move us neatly onto the IGDA. So you joined that group of Mother Hubbards back in. Sorry, I like having guests have a Wikipedia page so I don't forget my names and dates.
I actually joined the organization in 2004 as a member.
Yeah.
And for the first couple of years, I kind of laid low. I was just kind of trying to read the landscape, and I mainly hung out with a lot of localization people who are mainly translators, because that was the closest thing to what I do. And I heard when I would go to things like GDC or E3, and a lot of them would bitch and moan about how nobody cares about localization and no one understands what we do. So I don't like hearing bitching and moaning. I like to fix that. So I said, let's create a special interest group to fix that. And so I did. I created the Localization Special Interest Group in the IGDA to basically educate non-localization people on what it is and why do we do what we do. And that led to, also I helped run the Seattle chapter of the IGDA for a few years. And eventually, in late 2012, I was approached by the board of directors, and they asked me if I'd be interested in running the global organization as executive director. And after a couple of interview cycles, I got the job. And the reason I did that, because I've been in the industry for 25 years, as of April of this year. And as a lot of us, as in our later years in our career, we start noticing. We notice like conditions are shit and we need to improve things in this industry. And in some cases, like myself, I just get this fire that I want this to change. I care about developers. I love what they do. I admire them tremendously, skill and creativity, and I want life to be better for them. And so I felt that taking the IGDA job was a chance for me to actually help make change happen for better.
That's way cool. I mean, was there any stuff that you were able to action during that time are there any great victory stories you can tell us?
Well, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, there's a lot of things that we highlighted very loudly, like crunch, which is a perpetual problem, especially in North America and East Asia and parts of Europe. But, it continues to be a problem. I mean, the issue of inclusion and diversity really became front and center during my time, because I was the executive director during the Gamergate.
Yeah.
And so I was personally attacked by them for 2 years straight, from late 2014 into 2016, and given death threats, harassment, all that kind of stuff, and mainly because I'm a woman in a position of leadership in the game industry who was speaking out in favor of inclusion and diversity, and that was that a lot of them wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So
it was a dark time, and yes, it's interesting that it still hasn't gone away in its entirety, and
No, it hasn't gone away. I mean, obviously, toxicity on the internet is here, and it's going to be here for a long time. I mean, find other methods to solve that problem, but at least with that particular movement, it sort of evolved into what we call the alt-right in the United States, and had a lot of influence on our last presidential election cycle, as no doubt everybody has paid attention to, because it affects us all in a very negative way. But let's not get into that either, because that will be a whole other discussion.
God, yes.
But yeah, it's challenging. And, I was fervent in basically standing strong and representing developers. And look, this industry needs to change. This industry needs to be more diverse. We want to see that those who games should better reflect those who play them, and we know that those who play games today are pretty much every kind of person you can imagine across the widest range of demographic, cultures, geography. And so why can this industry not also adapt in that way? And I mean, it's not an easy answer. There's a lot of things that we have to solve to reach that point. But yeah, that was I think, if I look back on my 5 years running the IGA, that was probably one of the biggest things that I would see. Is, I'm not going to call it a victory. I just think what was useful is that, being the kind of person that I am, I push back when I am pushed, and I push back pretty hard. And so I'm glad that I was the one in that position that happened. And I also think we made some good vocal statements around crunch as well, and highlighting that topic, and especially when we partner with Take This, which is an organization that deals with mental health in the game industry.
Shout out to Take This, because they do some heckin' good work.
They do. I mean, it's so good. In fact, that's why I joined their board of directors after I left the IGA. So I'm happy to serve.
I didn't realise. I do apologise.
No, that's totally fine.
That wasn't even a complimentary. That's really cool. That was just a pure coincidence there.
Yeah, well, I serve on their board because I believe their mission is extremely important, and I came to that conclusion in my years running IGA. I talked with literally thousands and thousands of developers around the world, in every kind of company, from AAA to solo indies, emerging markets, in developed markets, and mental health always had a very strong theme running through a lot of the problems that they were facing, especially in the game developer space. I mean, that's where there's a lot of issues that they deal with. The anxiety of launching and fighting depression and a lot of other issues there.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that I think we need to address, of course.
I mean, this isn't about me, but I will say that there was an intensive campaign I did back in the day, and the effects of that were far more pronounced than anyone had prepared me for. And now having organisations like Take This discussing these things properly, it's something I wish I had access to back in the day, but I'm so glad exists. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, in my years, the last 6-7 years, I've really had a strong advocacy focus. Even though I'm still doing my culturalization work, I'm very, very busy with that. But I still am very strongly in favor of pushing the advocacy efforts as much as I can, which is why actually one of the reasons why I left the IGA last year was so that I could pursue advocacy efforts in a more, I guess you would say, aggressive, blunt fashion that I think the industry needs right now.
Hopefully I'm clicking on the right one. Yes, here we go. So this is the site for Take This. And here's the little crew, and here's those that sponsor it. Also, if you were at PAX last year, bloody hell, time traveler's weird. If you were at PAX just recently, or any of them, the AFK room has been sponsored by a large number of people, and I'm right in saying that Take This was the one that first brought the AFK room to PAX, but that's a small element on a long conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Take This room is kind of like the cornerstone or the tentpole effort that people know Take This for. But they're the ones who originated the AFK room and have been running them at PAX events ever since. And they've also done it. They've started branching out, doing it at other events too. Like they do it at E3, and they've done it at some other things too.
Well, if they do it at Gamescom, that's where... but only on the Saturday and Sunday for the poor community managers and reps who weren't high enough up the ranks to leave Friday night. God, yeah.
Yeah. No.
Gamescom still haunts me.
Well, that's actually where we are talking about that. That might be a possibility. But, that one question from Zaragonos that I've addressed, I think that's a great question about, is there a difference in how I approach a game industry problem versus more of a social problem? And the answer is yes. I mean, there's obviously we've got toxicity problems online, which are universal. They're absolutely not unique to games at all. It tends to be a little more pronounced in the game industry compared to other forms of online engagement. But so there are certain things like when we were at the height of Gamergate, there were a bunch of us in the industry banded together across different companies and formed what we called Operation Diversity in Gaming. And this was something that was initially supported by Intel when they did their Diversity in Tech initiative they announced in early 2015, which was frankly in response to their blunder in pulling their ads from Gama Sutra after Gamergaters complained about it. Intel just didn't know. They were unaware, and they were caught unaware, so they actually played into their hands, and then they paid penance for it by committing $300 million US to changing diversity in the tech sector. So that was a very positive outcome that came out of that blunder. And so our DIG initiative, as we called it, that got started, and we had some amazing conversations and had a lot of amazing headway around this issue in the industry as a result of it. And so, is the sexism and inclusion issues unique to games? Well, no, it's not unique at all, but there are some unique aspects to it in games just because of the gaming culture that comes with it. And that's part of what we've had to address, which is a little bit different from the larger societal problem. But then we have things like a lot of the times when I did interviews back during that time, and even since, one of the things I've highlighted a lot is the fact that what all of these things are emphasizing, Gamergate or whatever else you want to point to, is that we as a human society are not ready for the interaction between what is the virtual worlds we inhabit and the real world we inhabit. The laws don't reflect it. We hear about virtual ownership. We hear about people dying because they lost their friend's virtual sword in some game. I mean, things like that. Basically, we're not ready for how we allow these two worlds to interact with each other, and it just that's a huge problem. And
I've always felt we over in the kind of community management space were partially responsible for that. The big push from closed forum communities to open, everyone should comment. We really didn't think about what the repercussions would be for giving a voice to everyone, because we didn't think outside of our existing communities. And
yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people were supposing, because I remember the old days. I mean, I am old, and I was around pre-internet, and we used to use dial-in BBS communities like that. And these communities were well moderated. They were well policed. People generally behaved themselves pretty well. There was the Usenet forums, there was IRC, chat, all these other forums. And most of them were pretty civil. I mean, yeah, occasionally you had some asshole come in who interrupted things, but community regulated itself quite well. But now it's just basically turned into the Wild West, where it's a mess. And despite companies' best efforts, and some companies are not putting up their best efforts, but despite a lot of companies putting a lot of resources into helping communities be more positive and less toxic, they're fighting a losing battle. I mean, they've got millions of players or millions of people in the community, and they've got maybe a team of 10 or 20 people trying to manage the toxicity. Skill factor.
Naming no names, but I do know a particular publisher individual that across their multiple titles, they don't have double-digit number of community managers, despite the fact they're managing multiple AAA-sized properties. And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make this about my profession in this, so I apologise. It was just I feel that the keen and enthusiasm of the community management kind of the change and shift we saw, like, I want to say like 2011, like the move away from closed communities and the idea of trying to get everyone into something together and social media becoming part of a studio's communication. We were not ready for what we were creating.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of it. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of what we're dealing with right now is that we create so fast and so well at the tech stuff and in our games community and everything. I mean, it's all awesome stuff. We all enjoy it. We all think it's super cool, but it's basically kind of gotten out of our hands to some degree. And I really do think that we as an industry, we can show leadership by helping other non-game community understand how do you deal with toxicity. And I would love to see the game industry step up and be more, show more leadership in this area. We have the ability to do it. We're very creative people.
Yeah.
I know we can figure this out and do it in a way that is conducive to a positive online community and minimizes toxicity. And we see some signs of it, where, like when Riot Games, despite their internal company problems, they actually implemented their positive reinforcement program in their forums, which I thought was a brilliant idea.
Yeah,
that's one really good way to address it.
It's unfortunate that the drama around Riot has actually removed a lot of the positive actions they've done to make their space more inclusive. So once Riot has, well, I guess once, at some point, I think I'd love to do a deep dive onto Riot's incentives towards positivity and the ways they've been trying to fight toxicity, because they're not just letting it be, which I think is, I'm not forgiving their firing of people and all the nonsense around the heckin', whatchamacallit, the non-white dudes panel at PAX, which I thought was a great idea, and So anyway, sorry, I'm careening off because I'm still on a high from this morning of while I'm absolutely not involved with the Creative Assembly in any way, shape or form, and I do not represent their products, but they put out a wonderful statement today, which was basically the politest get out of our sandbox to a very bigoted group who have currently been targeting them. And it made me so happy.
It's awesome when we see that. To me is another form of leadership, when companies are willing to stand up and they're able to back up their developers and back up their staff and back up the creative vision. And BioWare's done this too. I loved in the past when BioWare has spoken up when people, if you remember when people were complaining about the gay characters in Mass Effect.
Oh,
and
Christ,
there were a lot of people. A lot of people were chirping and yelling about it, and BioWare wrote a blog post that basically said, you know what? Deal with it. That's the way the world is. If you don't like it, don't play our game. But that's we're representing the way that the world is.
Yeah.
And I love that. I more companies should respond in that manner, defending themselves and defending their creative vision. Because it's only natural. You don't often see. Filmmakers get shit too for making a film a certain way or representing a certain way. But in general, what do you hear a director or a writer of a film would say? They basically say, yeah, whatever. It's not your movie. It's my movie. If you don't like it, go make your own movie. Yes. And I think we also need to adopt more of an unapologetic approach to our creative vision.
Yeah, I am down for that. And this is what's so fascinating about it, is that there are very few elements which genuinely impact the creativity of large-scale games. And one of the ones that is this very vocal, very toxic group of, I'm gonna say it's probably a bunch of visibly straight white dudes, genuine, attacking developers, going after them in ways that they know will have an effect. That's having far more impact on people's creative process than any amount of inclusivity. Yeah, so I'm sorry. I'm going on the rant train now. I do apologize.
No, it's quite all right. I mean, there's a couple of questions that were back there that I wanted to.
Please do.
there was one about what's the most rewarding thing I feel I've done that's had a positive effect, and that is fairly easy to answer. For me, it's I've had so many interactions with. I've been in a mentorship role with so many students, so many younger people in this industry. Whenever I give them advice, whether or not they follow it, that's up to them. But a lot of times they will eventually get back to me. And like if they say, hey, I got that job I was talking to you about, or the game I was hoping to make 2 years ago, I finally launched it on iOS or whatever. To see their victories and to know that you had some part in helping them out. I mean, I don't really crap about taking credit for anything. That's not what I'm doing it for. I'm doing it because I want them to that sense of joy that comes from being in this industry, from being successful in this industry, whatever success looks like for them. It's for some people it's getting that AAA job they've always wanted. For others, it's launching their own game. For others, it's they finally took the stage at GDC for the first time in their life, and it was so exciting for them. I mean, whatever it is, I mean, I love being able to help them out, and so my victory, I guess, is helping people in all these ways, which are often behind the scenes, and that's the way I prefer it. It's totally fine. I mean, I've had other people tell me that the talks I've given and the role I had in the IG, even since then, they feel inspired, or they, I guess they feel I have some sense of ferocity about how I approach things, and they like that, and they like to emulate that, which is great. But anything I can do to help people around me is really where I see my legacy.
That's super cool. And the amount of people that speak very highly of yourself and such mentorship, it speaks volumes. And okay, this is a Will opinion, and I don't need you to agree with me on this one, but I'm so tired of being shown these little think pieces on the auteur and the superstar, the rock star designer. I'm fucking tired of that. I am much more excited that you are here on my show today and we're talking about the things we're talking about than Mr. I made this game once and I put in a different kind of colour for the jump mechanics and now I'm a legend.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I mean, it's just. I mean, I know a lot of this. I know a lot of very well-known people in this industry, and they're really, really cool people. And a lot of what makes them cool is that they have been so radically successful, and with their creative vision and sharing that with the world, and yet they remain the coolest, humblest people I know, and that's what's really nice about hanging out with them. So
also, I'm only going to touch on this one a little bit because I want to talk about game advocacy. I want to talk about so much stuff. It's also worth noting that when I describe Kate as an industry badass, your cosplay stuff is also awesome. Like, we were talking about this in the preamble. I was trying to pick an image for social media posts, and I went for the venture beat of you in plate mail doing an on-stage kind of like fireplace chat.
Yeah.
There was another one of you with weapons drawn, I think in the same interview, but it was sadly 3x4, not 16x9, so it didn't fit for the post. I'm so sorry.
Right.
So sorry.
It's okay. No, it's funny. I've been cosplaying for many, many years. I mean, I'm old enough to where Return of the Jedi came out in my senior year of high school. My brother and I, we went to the opening as an X-Wing pilot and as a TIE Fighter pilot. And,
who was who?
I was the TIE Fighter pilot.
Yes!
I wanted to be in black, so. But and I thought they looked a lot cooler anyway.
Yeah.
So, and a year later, I made my own Ghostbusters jumpsuit because the movie came out a year later. And the cool thing, though, is that my daughter, I raised a proper geek because she became a costume designer, a professional costume designer. And so
way cool!
So the cosplay we do together, it's all of her work. And we do a lot of superheroes. Like I do Thor, she does Loki. I do Wonder Woman, she does Batgirl. We do Indiana Jones and Short Round. We do like Captain Marvel and Grandmaster and all the Doctor Strange and all these characters. And it's super fun. I mean, obviously it's something I love to do with my daughter. I also get to wear her handiwork, which is just a really cool feeling. But the other thing, a lot of people know me, especially for my Thor cosplay, because I love that character.
Yeah.
And the last few years, I've been cosplaying the Jane Foster Thor from the comic books.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're blonde and blue-eyed and you're 191 centimeters tall, you cosplay what works for you.
You pick up a hammer.
Right, and that works for me. And the coolest part about it, though, I get people who ask me, why do you like to cosplay so much? And I say, well, it's for all of those reasons, but part of it is also because when I put on the costume, for me, it's really kick-ass. And I tell people that for in that moment, you get kind of the external representation of how I feel about myself. And it's just a really kind of, it's almost like you're just exposing, okay, world, now, yeah, this is who I really am. And yeah, I carry a hammer around. And it's fun. It's a fun feeling, you know, and I highly recommend it for anybody.
That is way cool. So yes, let's move on to game advocacy because, let's take that hammer and let's smash it into some ideas. So you also run. Sorry. Now, do you run GameAdvocacy.org or are you a part of? I apologise, as I definitely need more tea. No, I'm good. So,
Yes.
If anyone needs me, I'll be in my shame hole.
No, so GameAdvocacy.org. So what that represents is that when I left the IGDA last year, my desire to advocate and make this a better industry did not diminish at all. In fact, I left the IGDA role because I felt I was being too constrained in that role to do what I really wanted to do, which is much more vocal about issues that I think we need to be vocal about, to be more blunt about it. I mean, I think like some companies, like what just happened at Telltale Games, we need to string up those people in the town square.
Oh my god.
You know,
all right,
figuratively speaking, not literally, but I mean, it's...
The day is young.
You know, we need to be aggressive about these things because, I mean, the IGDA has been around for 24 years. The ESA has been around for 24 years in the U.S. You know, it's like, what actually has changed in the industry in all that time? We still have rampant crunch. We still have... Our diversity still sucks. We're still seeing studios treat their workers like utter shit. And it's like, we need to change this.
Yes.
And so...
The two I want to say real quick. I'm still pissed at ArenaNet. Like, they have done nothing they've done nothing to undo the damage they did industry-wise with their very public firing of one of their staff who disagreed with someone on the internet. And
right.
I am fuming on so many levels because the statement by Telltale tried to put a spin on the positivity of them firing most of their workforce, as if they were dandelions being released into the wind. We made these wonderful narrative creative individuals and now they are free to roam the industry. I'm like, I want to hit you with a shoe.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's all bullshit. Let's face it. I mean, what they did was wrong. And in my understanding, just as of today, there was an article in Polygon that it sounds like there's going to be a class action lawsuit against them, which is fantastic. So, you know, I hope there is. I really do. I hope that there's going to be a massive backlash, and you know, we're going to see some kind of effect going on here, because there needs to be. So,
I mean,
yeah,
a lot of people here in chat know my feels that, you know, the business of video games is important, and what I do not want anyone to get let off is that the individuals who are responsible for that business element fecked up, and they fecked up so badly that 200 people lost their jobs. That is on someone, and that someone is taking no accountability or responsibility. From what I heard, it looks like they were trying to do a deal with Lionsgate that fell through. So
right,
I'm
exactly.
guessing yet another film property, but like, sorry.
No, it's all extremely frustrating. And the thing is that people, they knew what was going on, and the fact that they were, you know, even onboarding employees the week before, you know, this happened.
Yeah.
That's just completely, utterly unconscionable in my opinion. I mean, that's just insane. You know.
Yeah, based in the Bay Area, so any of those new employees, unless they were local, have just have just done full relocation.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
so game advocacy. Why am I struggling to pronounce that today? I do not know. So game advocacy is. Well, I mean, what's the best way we can wield this hammer? How can we help it? How can we support it?
Well, so basically what it is that when I left the IDA, I wanted to have my own form of expression of issues that I want to address in the industry. And on that website, gameadvocacy.org,
Yeah.
I basically kind of state my case for the areas that I am most concerned about. One is perception, so I think that we as an industry need to work a lot harder for the public perception, because I think we're sticking at that very badly. We've never been good at it. I mean, the public narrative about games and developers has been terrible, and I don't really see anyone that quickly.
Yes.
I also want to focus on wellness, on mental and physical health, and just the overall well of developers as humans. The inclusion aspect as well, making sure that the games are inclusive and that they strive to be inclusive. Finally, the fairness aspect, which is basically treating each other with mutual respect. Telltale is a perfect example where there's like no fairness place there at all.
And it's exceedingly infuriating. Sorry, I'm just.
No, that's quite all right. And so the first thing that I did in earlier years is one of the things that I'd always thought about doing was creating my 50 over 50 list. Because we always see like the Forbes 30 under 30 list, and like here's the up and coming, sparkling youth that's going to make the world a better place and all that. I think that's great. I have nothing against lists like that, because there's really great people, and I know a lot of those people, like when they do the 30 under 30 for games. Some of those are people I've actually mentored as well, so I'm super happy when I see them. But there's also remarkable people still doing a lot of work and doing great work, and they're over 50 years old. And so I felt, why are we not highlighting, the people who are still around doing great work? And that's because tech culture and game culture, especially on the industry side, is so youth oriented.
Yeah. Because
only these younger people can possibly understand this or possibly work or whatever.
Yeah.
That's all complete bullshit. I mean, what I find fascinating, especially, is that in all, most people who make games are geeks of some kind. We consume a lot of fantasy and sci-fi and all these other, media, because we love it. It's who we are. And yet, in a lot of those forms of media that we consume, how often do you see like an elderly, wizened character who guides the hero on their journey, and that elderly character is indispensable to the hero's journey? I mean, think of it: Dumbledore, Gandalf, Obi-Wan, Yoda. I mean, Mr. Miyagi. I mean, you can go down the list over and over again, and or entire character where the wizened elderly, person is absolutely essential. And yet, it's have a really hard time following through with that.
Yeah. One of the things that I've talked about a lot is Brendan from Bluehole, Brendan Green, who, otherwise known as Player Unknown. Because dude's...
Right.
I don't know his exact age. He is definitely late 40s. And he didn't, He wasn't a person who was making video games from a young age. He wasn't some Das Wunderkind who, broke onto the scene out of nowhere. Someone who took up modding and design and creation of games as a hobby while living in Brazil, and hit upon a formula, worked on it, refined it, took the mod, got the chance to make it as a standalone, and the dude is now set for life. Like, he is not, he does not have to work in the day, but he was not this bright young star that came out of nowhere. He didn't see any cash from any of his work until his late 40s. And I try and talk about that because, especially for young people coming into the industry, they just get crushed under this pressure that, by the time you're 20, you need to be, ready to go at a AAA studio with a stonking portfolio and have at least, 8 successful indie games out or something. And, That's not possible. Like,
No. Well, that's the thing. I mean, the thing is that a lot of people don't understand, and I get it. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I've had to deal with this even with my own daughter. I mean, she's 30 now, and she's kind of comfortable setting. She's on her path to doing what she wants to do, which is great. I meet a lot of people who are like in 20, 25, maybe their late 20s, and a huge crush of, I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to do what I want to do. Things aren't coming together the way I planned, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, okay, I'm 53, all right? I've got perspective now. And I've got the scars to show it, too. But, it's like you realize over time that, ultimately things come together in ways you never, ever planned or expected. And yet they do
Very
come
true.
together. And, there is a big cliche about being consistent and staying on target for what you really want to do. That's not a cliche. It's the truth.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't mention is the flip side of that is that there's a lot of fucking hard work that you have to do to get there. It takes a lot of persistence. Persistence is another word for working your ass off. Now, you shouldn't be crunching. You shouldn't work yourself to death or any of those. You should be, wholly focused on yourself better at what you do.
I mean, the one that I would add, well, I'm sure you can relate a little bit to this one, Kate, is that sometimes the highest post doesn't necessarily make you the happiest.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of young'uns, I thought rushing to like a super senior position was the fastest way to happiness, and I was very wrong. I was very wrong, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I mean, I know that while go around like Facebook or elsewhere where it shows like all of these famous people, like actors mostly, who, when did they become famous? Well, like, I think one of them is like Morgan Freeman, I think everybody knows.
Yeah.
Start really into acting 40, and now you think about how successful he's been. I mean, there's painters who didn't start painting until their 40s or 50s. There's writers who didn't write their first successful book well into their 50s. There's many examples of this happening, and yet they were persistent all along.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you my own story,
Please.
just in a nutshell, when I left high school, I wanted to be a conceptual artist for Lucas, just so I could work on something Star Wars. I was so Star Wars obsessed, I still tend to be. But I wanted to work for Lucasfilm, and I had the artistic capability, so I found out that their artists, they did industrial design. Yeah. And so I went into college doing industrial design, and I did that for a couple years because I totally got down the storyboard style, especially in film. So I'm like, okay, this is it. I can do this. But then I got disinterested in the actual program I was at, this California at Cal State Beach.
Yeah.
And I just have other interests, and so I, on a total whim, changed my major to geography and cartography because I love maps, culture, I love travel, and I knew that I could also use my artistic skills in cartography. And so I just kind of went in that direction. Said, well, guess what? That path had led me into doing this culturalization work on video games, and so eventually I landed BioWare as a client of mine now for 2006.
No big deal.
And I've worked on all of their games then, and I'm actually have to work on Anthem. And but I got to work on Star Wars: The Republic.
Yeah.
So I got to work on something Star Wars. It was an amazingly rewarding experience. No, it wasn't working on a movie, doing conceptual art, but I was doing a function that I was also good at and doing it for this game, and it was a fantastic experience. So you never ever know or can predict when stuff comes around again.
Yeah. So you actually, I'm gonna change gear quickly. Although it's lovely seeing everyone in chat being like, "I'm 22, I'm 27, I'm 30."
Yeah, I noticed.
We've got a lovely mix of people here. But Beadora had a good question that I think is very important for not just for people who step into front-facing roles or people who work in games, but just in general. Like, do you have any good tips on ways to deconnect from the stress and the work-related stuff, like toxic users or bad press? If you've got any tips for surviving bad press stuff, I think I could use a few of them. Well, it's calm down, but sorry, please continue.
Well, okay. Well, on the bad press point, that's a little more unique. I mean, press is the press. Their job is to critique, and they will critique.
Yes.
And especially if you live in the UK, where critique is an art form. I'm putting it mildly, and I know this from direct
Couldn't possibly
experience.
comment.
Yeah, I mean, when I was working at Microsoft, and I had some press backlash when I was presenting at a conference related to Microsoft, and the British press were extremely harsh. I mean, very harsh, and I think they were unduly harsh, but they did what they felt was their job.
Yeah.
And I came to realize later, I talked with the head of the PR for Microsoft UK, and he just shrugged it off. He's like, hey, they're like this all the time. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, but did you see what they said about what I said? And they're like, yeah, whatever. He's like, that's not even the half of it. I'm like, okay. So he kind of helped me calm down. But and I've had dealings with the press for decades now. And I mean, you just realize, I mean, there's good ones. There's ones that are not so good. There's, they're doing the job that they're set out to do. You're going to get bad press now and then.
Yes.
You're also going to have people online chattering against you and doing all that kind of stuff. Obviously, if people are threatening you, then you have to take action. You contact your local law enforcement. You take advantage of resources. But more than anything, I mean, if it's not something that you perceive as an actual threat, you have to realize that these people, many of them do it because they just want to create chaos in the world, just like the Joker in The Dark Knight. That's it. They're there to create chaos, and if you realize that they are agents of chaos, and they really, frankly, don't give a shit about you or your game or whatever you're doing, they're there because they can be, and so when you put it in perspective like that, you can kind of step back and say, this is going to happen with or without me. It could have been my game. It could have been someone else's game. It could have been something that's not even. Now, if they're giving you constructive feedback on things that you think that are valid concerns, definitely listen to them. Maybe they're telling you something that you really need to read. If they're doing it in a nice, constructive way, then listen to them and thank them for the feedback. But if they're not, just ignore it. Yeah. Block them, ban them, boot them, whatever you want to do to get them out of your community. If they're not going to be constructive, then you just don't give them any of your time or anxiety or mental health or any of that, because you have to realize, imagine your mental and physical is essentially a nice big, pint, then, you're giving that away to others instead. But
I'm afraid you're breaking up a little bit on that one, but I think you were saying on the terms of, like, if you look at your mental and emotional health as a pie, every person you give your time to, you're giving them a piece of that. And
exactly. I mean, exactly. And the other thing too that I think is really important, and I talk a lot about this in my advocacy talks, is about imposter syndrome. I think all of us deal with it to some degree. We all look in the mirror and we say, I don't really know my shit. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. That's supernatural. I mean, every human being has that at some point. So we have to realize first and foremost that it's a human behavior. It's natural to feel that way at times. But you also have to realize that pretty much everyone around you is feeling the same way.
Yeah, as someone who is actually 3 corgis in a trench coat this entire time, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to realize that everyone around us is also dealing with that. So we have to focus on, just basically what I tell people is that you have to be cognizant of feeling that way. That's really important. And you also have to understand that everyone around you is also feeling that way. And the other thing too is, if you're an artist, for example, let's say you're an artist on games and you admire work, maybe it's in your own classroom where you're going to game school or wherever it is.
Yeah.
If you're seeing somebody and you're saying, my God, their skill, I will never be that good. Well, guess what? I mean, one of the things I do when I give a lecture on this topic is I'll put up a slide and I have 2 portraits. One is by Rembrandt, one is by Picasso. You could not have 2 different art styles, and yet they are vastly different, and yet they are considered 2 of the greatest masters in human history, in art. And so everyone's got a unique style. Everyone has a different approach to it. And if you still are looking over at that person saying, I wish I could do it like them, well, guess what? You may have just found a mentor. Go ask them.
Yeah.
Go approach them and say, hey, I love what you're doing here. Is there any way you can teach me how you did that? Because I would love to know.
Yeah. Though I will say that when I finally move into my own place again, I want to get a print of the comic, which is each person saying, I will never be as good as the great masters of old. And at the end of it is a cave dude drawing on a wall who goes, I am the best.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, as we've had a few people come in and join us, and bloody hell, this first hour is whizzed by. Brilliant. So, today I am joined by the wonderful industry of Titan that is Kate Edwards. We are chatting games industry generalists, we are chatting advocacy, sharing some old war stories, and just generally discussing, mental health and survivability in the games industry. So, if you've got good questions, throw them at me or at, what was your Twitch account? Was Game... where was it?
Yeah, game advocacy.
Game advocacy, so throw them at, and we will answer them as we're kicking them. Yes, and the Prolo was kind enough to throw the aforementioned comic in chat, which makes me feel very good.
Yes, very nice.
And what's also nice is, especially talking with yourself, and I love that at GDC and places like that, we no longer have do we have to justify video games as an art form, but that video games are art, and how do we look at them in that manner? That is something that is still making my heart sing. Like, gone are the days of, arguing back and forth on, video games are art. No, well, they're made on a computer, so they can't be art. It's like, being able to talk about these things with yourself, like the amount of life that one must put into these projects to bring them to market, and the impact they have on those that see them, be it through representation or from their message, is bloody brilliant. Like, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to sing about that because it makes me very happy.
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree. And I do think, however, at least in my experience, because I interface with a lot of people in government,
please,
as well as the public, and I still think we have a long way to go, though, with that argument that games are art. In the public sphere, they're not seeing it yet as being that. It is changing.
Yeah.
The demographic shift. And the good news is that within 15 or 20 years, every politician on Earth will have grown up with video games. So that's going to be I think we're going to see a massive change of perspective, at least in the political sphere, in terms of how they approach games. So I think that's going to fix itself. I mean, and to be honest, that's happened with pretty much every form of media that's ever been introduced in human history. I mean, every one of them, television had pushback, movies had pushback, even the waltz, way back when the waltz was first introduced. It was shocking to people that a man and a woman would stand so close to each other while dancing.
I mean, it is scandalous, let's be honest.
Oh, very much so.
I mean, that's some ankle-showing levels of scandal.
Well, especially scandalous to women to have to dress in a corset like that and wear heels of that height when you're trying to dance.
That's a skill. I mean,
Yeah,
I can only... I'm fine with the corset, but honestly, I can only work in flats. So, actually, I want to jump back to your point about things we can do. So, what can things... Those of us who are very passionate about games, those of us who observe games as an art form, those of us that create games, what can we do to better put forward the entirety of it? That games aren't just shooty bang bang McMinecraft. What can we do from our space to help this process forward?
Well, see, here's where this is one of my core messages I've been spreading since I left the IGA. One of the things that's really clear to me is that the power to change perception lies in every single person who is involved in the art form. So every game creator...
The power was within you all along!
That's right. That's the secret. It doesn't belong to an association. It doesn't belong to some organization. It belongs. And the reason I say that is because when I interact with the public, especially people in government, when I interact with them, they expect people from trade associations and professional associations to talk to them. What they don't hear and what they rarely interact with are game developers.
Okay.
So, and they don't have that direct interaction with them, and they want to. They want to know the people who actually do the work, not the people who are in a political position to represent them. And so I've heard countless stories of opinions changed just because a government official, for example, interacts with a game developer and actually know what they do. So there was a story somebody told me at Gamescom just here, where it was in Canada, and one of the provincial governments, an MP, a member of parliament in the provincial government, who was very anti-video game. And so the studio, what they did, they're a small studio, and they did exactly the number one thing that I recommend developers do. They invited a politician to visit their studio, and he spent the day there, and they showed him all about how games are made. He met all the really cool people there who are nice people. They have families. They're taxpayers. They're good people doing these tech-related jobs. And so they sat him down. They even had him try, like, Unity. They had him try, like, playing their games and stuff.
Cool.
So in one day, now this is an exceptional example, but in one day they turned to this guy 180 degrees. When he responded to them after the fact, he basically thanked them for giving him perspective, and now he's a supporter of games, and he wants the game industry in his province to succeed. That's the kind of engagement I'm talking about. That needs to come from every single individual game creator who can reach out, whatever level they are comfortable reaching out, whether it's town or city, whether it's province, state, whatever, county, whatever it might be, and engage the people, because we need to have that kind of engagement. And even with the public as well. Like I've asked game studios, both large and small, when's the last time you had like a public open house to like invite the public in and help them understand here's how video games are made?
Yes, there's been a lot of the behind closed doors secrecy of the past. I think we need to be done with that now.
I think so too. Well, I mean, especially because film does not have this problem for two reasons. One, film has been around much longer than us. It's been around over a century now.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is that the general public, they understand how films get made. There's been tons of films about making films. I mean, it's not a secret how films get made. And so, but games are a mystery black box to the public. They have no idea what goes into game creation. They don't know the kind of people who are involved in game creation. Yeah. And it's our responsibility as those who actually create the games. I think we are the ones who need to step up and show the world this is who we are, this is what we do, and we're fucking damn proud of it.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing things like series like NoClip and People Make Games that are doing well, but as DG Alternative was pointing out, why don't we have more day in the life pieces from studios? I'd love to see what a day in the life Bethesda makes like. Usually what happens in those scenarios is that they either turn into a heavily overproduced dev diary, or they become a community asset, or they become a recruitment asset, and each of those is looking to serve a very specific purpose. Whereas none of them are really saying, no, just this is what it's like to work here and be part of this team. I'd like to see more of those myself. So, as I said, I'm very happy that we have teams like NoClip and... do you know Chris Bratt at all? Bratters?
Yes, I do.
His work on People Make Games is brilliant, and I'm so happy that he's been able to continue doing it.
No, I agree absolutely, and I think so too. That I completely agree that kind of stuff is the kind of thing we need to see more often. Yeah. We need to see it more in the mainstream, where people can understand and appreciate this. This is how games get made. These are and more importantly, though, these are the people who make. Because when I talk to the public, I often get these bizarre assumptions about who game creators are and the kinds of things that are like. I mean, I meet some people who believe that all we do is sit around in a room deciding how violent games should be.
Do you not? That's pretty much me before I come on show. I've got like a big board, like violence to more violent. I put tick boxes on it. It's great.
Well, yeah, and to be fair,
sorry.
I mean, there are times where we do that. I mean, I worked on all the Dead Rising games, and that we did exactly that. We had to sit around talking about how violent we're going to be, but that was the point of the game. It's this zombie violence, and it was very graphic, and it was an M-rated game. You had to think about all these creative things that you do to these zombies, kill them to make it more interesting.
Yeah.
But so when the narrative and the game design warrants have that conversation. But you're not sitting around all the time.
Well, you were breaking up a little bit there, but I can see where you're coming from. That when the project and the design warrant it, yes, you sit around and look at the appropriate amount of violence for that, or whatever experience you're trying to convey.
Yes, exactly.
The thing I wanted to jump back on just for a moment was that video games have a very unique position in terms of artistic mediums, in that games companies are amazing for local economies. From as it was explained to me by a good friend of mine, is that a games company sets up in a town. They have their studio. Most of the people will move local. Very few will commute. So what ends up happening is that company makes money. Money goes to employees. Employees spend their money in the local area, either buying houses or just buying food and renting and things like that. And that will increase and continue as the studio progresses. Game studios don't move around. Maybe that's something they should consider. We had this discussion on Saturday about whether Telltale should have moved their offices to another part of the country which was more affordable, but that's another matter. The reason I bring this up is that the music industry, and to some extent the film industry, doesn't have that same ability to say, right, this little studio is going to set up here and they are going to be just great for your economy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. I've had this conversation with a lot of government officials because a lot of governments, like at the national level or state level, level might be, they have a film office because they want to attract film production into their city or into their locale, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, these film offices have been around for decades, but as I've often explained to them, what's the point of attracting a film production? Because what do? They come in, they set up shop for maybe 3 months, 6 months, something like that, and then they do their film and they leave. And they often are highly subsidized by you anyway because you're trying to attract them to come there. And so what do you really get out of it other than a little bit of prestige by having it on the screen? Whereas with game developers, exactly to your point, they come in, they stay. They have brick and mortar offices, they grow their companies, they all pay taxes locally. And, basically those are the kinds of attract.
Yeah.
What's been fascinating is when I visit a lot of emerging markets, there's incredible positivity among government officials. I've seen it in Colombia, Tunisia, and all these other countries where government officials at the highest level of the country, they are very positive video game catalyst economic growth because they understand that games are they're this great confluence of both art, technology, science. And so all of these things come together. So if they foster a strong game industry, they also foster a strong education system that employees into it, which in that same education system can help people all around.
So, again, there was a little bit of breaking up, but I think I can paraphrase by saying that, in these emerging markets, people attracting game companies is not only good for the local economy, but also for, education of future generations of game creators.
Yeah, exactly. And it's basically for a lot of economy, it's a quick way to grow your tech sector. It's going to be a lot easier to set up game studios and try and help them see than it is to try and create another Microsoft or Oracle.
Yeah. One of the things that's really interesting about, and I'm sorry to keep bringing it back to New Zealand stories, but the town that we set up in was very, very small, but it was a university town. So there was us over at Rocketworks, and there was also Runaway Play. So you had 2 studios in one small town, and it meant that the caliber of individuals that these students had access to was above and beyond what they would usually get in the the greater New Zealand area. We essentially created this tiny little hotbed of different disciplines and skills, and it was awesome. It meant that these students could leap ahead of their peers because that knowledge of how games are created, that knowledge of different disciplines is so valuable. And
it is.
Seattle, we've got that in spades, which is awesome. But
we do, which is great. I mean, even to the point the point that was chat about that there's games, and here in Seattle, there's called the Museum of Pop Art or Pop Culture, excuse me, and it used to be called the Experience Music Project. And I was asked to be involved in the creation of the game exhibit, which they did a few years ago.
Oh, wait, cool. I think I went to that.
Yeah, so they interviewed several of us, and I know I've got like a video in there talking about cultivation and all that. And there's other people talking about different aspects of game creation. And what was really cool is that when they opened the game exhibit, it was supposed to be temporary,
Yeah.
but it has been so popular that they made it a permanent fixture of the museum.
Yeah.
And it has been a fantastic space for the public to go in and understand from the indie perspective, this is games are art here, and they have interviews with the creators of the games on video that people can watch, and the game creator talks about their inspirations and why did they make this game and what they were intending. And it's just a fantastic way to help the public understand. And so I think we need a hell of a lot more of that kind of stuff out there.
Yeah, I would second that. And if any of you do come on out to Seattle, absolutely go to the I can't remember what's the official title. It's not the Science Museum. It's something.
No, it's Museum of Pop Culture. They call it the Mopop.
The Mopop. And yeah, the sci-fi exhibit there is awesome. They've got the tiny models from Aliens, and they're awesome. But the games display is so good because it's just, in a way that people are used to, it so clearly demonstrates the artistic intent behind games, and it takes the creator's vision, what the creator is trying to do, and then shows you immediately that game, rather than trying to ask people to extrapolate backwards, which can be very difficult if you don't understand. So it's rad as heck. If you're in Seattle, absolutely give it a look. Where were we? Sorry, I got all righteous there. I lost my train of thought. I do apologise. Aha, rhymes with moose. What, old friend? I didn't think we were gonna have you today. I was slightly worried there. Right. So I'm trying to think what it was. So we discussed representation in local government. We talked a lot about your past and your background and fighting the great trolls.
Yes.
We touched a little on Telltale and the things that are going down. It's still. I don't want to keep hammering on about it because especially my lot here have had to listen to me get very red-faced and angry about the current scenario. I'm trying to think what else. There was one other thing I desperately wanted to talk to you about, and it has completely dropped out of my head. I'm so sorry, Kate.
That's quite all right. I mean, yeah. I mean, the Telltale thing is. I mean, we've had some great examples. I say great. It's great for the cause. It's not great for the industry.
Yeah.
Over the last few months, between ArenaNet and Riot, and now with Telltale, all of these.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping that those people, everyone who is interested in going into games, who is not in the industry yet, needs to think really long and hard about what's going on. What's going on with the company illustrating some systemic problem.
Yes.
For those who are in the industry, think about what are they going to do about it. Is Catalyst that's going to stand up and do something about it. And especially for gamers, players out there, they need to think about these your favorite games being created. So I honestly think that if we could get the public more engaged and frankly more on our side in terms of game creators and issues that we're facing, we can actually change company behavior a lot more because these executives, sure as hell are not listening to their own staff very much, but they will.
Yes, as we saw with ArenaNet so badly.
Yeah, so they will listen to the public. I guarantee you they will.
Yep.
So if there was the public having outrage saying you should pay your people severance, don't let them go or whatever, it's like I think there would be more of a response, but because there isn't. I mean, that whole connection, art consumers, isn't there as much. It's definitely on the indie side. Well, he's not much on the AAA side.
And the thing I'd like to add is, and the reason why this is all so very important, even if you're not ever going to be, part of the industry working, even if you're only ever going to be kind of, observanal. I just made a new word. Yay! Even if you're only going to be observing games, or consuming the media of it, which is brilliant and fine. That is absolutely 5 by 5. I kept thinking about our conversation with Scar Studios last week, where they hecked up on the business side, but because they had been because they had been sensible, because they had not over bloated, because their business model and how they operated their studio was sensible, they were able to bounce back from this failure and go on to create a brilliant game. What is upsetting me is that there is a game we do not know about. And I'm not saying that it's not a game that is like hidden under production. Or maybe it's one of the ones that they're going to get canned. But there was something that Telltale would have eventually have made which would have blown everyone's socks off. More so than The Walking Dead. And that's not going to happen now. We are being deprived of games because of some very bad business practice, and more so because of the shite that's going on after.
Right, exactly.
Like, that, there is a game that we will never play because of the nonsense that has gone down, and that infuriates me.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not the first time it's happened, and unfortunately it will not be the last time it happens either. Just it basically again illustrates why, we're going through these throes of change in the industry about how business is conducted, which that's not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
I mean, time.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say. So while Greenfire and Beadora have excellent questions, I'd like to ask you the one that Zeragonos put forward, which is: are there any bigger games companies that you know that are good examples, like ones to look at and go, all right, let's do it like them?
Yeah, I think there are some. I mean, there's certainly ones in Europe, because Europe tends to have better labor laws, so they by default design their culture so that they are not as subjected to crunch. I think Vuga is a great example.
Sorry, who was that?
Vuga. WOOGA.
WOGGA.
No, WOOGA.
Vuga.
So they're mostly a mobile game company. They have a great internal culture. They do not crunch. They have a strong commitment to inclusion and diversity of their company. They're a very internationally mixed company as well, which tends to be a lot of companies in Berlin these days. But it's just a great example. I mean, here in the U.S. in Boston, a company called Disruptor Beam that was started by John Radoff. He was at Microsoft back when I was there. So he created this company, and he was very explicit about we do not crunch. We treat our employees fairly. So what I'm seeing is that we see these companies that started who've experienced the crap that in the AAA world. So they come out of it saying, I can do better than I will do better than this. And so there are some encouraging examples out there of companies that are striving to do better. But then you've got very large companies that it's going to take time. I mean, Microsoft, where I was for 13 years, they've improved tremendously since I left in 2005. I know a lot of people who are still there. Company culture has improved drastically. They have an extremely strong and honest commitment for everyone initiative, which I know is very earnest. Phil Spencer very personally and very strongly about it. So, I think there's a lot of good examples out there, but then we're just, we obviously hear about a lot of shit.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, we have to be careful because even Riot, for many years, was often seen, and ArenaNet too, to a certain degree, were seen as very positive examples, and yet then we see these big exposés on what their culture was really like.
Yes.
And so it's very disheartening.
So, I mean, and that's why it's good to talk about these wins, these positive elements. So jumping back on, so Beadora had a good one, which were there are networks and so on for people who want to hire advisors on representational matters, like checking for minority representation or varying sexualities and genders done right in their games. So in the same way that yours has been cultural, is there anything similar for representation on an individual level?
There are some people out there who do that. I mean, I do that as well. That's part of what I do in culturalization, and with stereotypes and dealing with racial depictions and gender and everything like that. There are people who specialize specifically in that. I mean, Tanya DePass is probably one of the more people. She runs her website called I Need Diverse Games. That's also her Twitter handle.
Very cool.
And so she's been very vocal on this herself.
Ooh,
So
you broke up a little bit there towards the end, so...
yes, I mean by the name itself, I Need Diverse Games. Clearly, this is something that concerns her greatly, and so yeah, she's one of the people I know who's out there in the field, and I know there's other people as well.
I see. I'd love to say I knew about I Need Diverse Games already, but I didn't. So, like, I'm learning along with everybody here at home. Just so long as you want to know. Like, I don't pretend to know nonsense I don't. And this seems rad. So I'm gonna have a read of this later on today.
And the other point to raise it, because I think elephant point is about the organization comment that was in chat, and they're absolutely right. I mean, that's actually a big part of my effort now. Is focused on how we can leverage forms of organized labor to help game developers in a much better way. One of the things that was super clear to me running the IGA after 5 years,
Yeah.
where developers are desperate for leverage. They want to feel like they've got some kind of leverage against their employer if necessary. And so for most people, leverage means unions. And so that's why we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest in unionization right now. The Game Workers Unite group that started around GDC earlier this year, I'm involved with that.
Yes.
I support it. I myself personally, I'm actually working on launching a legal defense fund for game developers.
Quite cool.
Because it's something I think we sorely need in this. I think especially for people like in space, so they will have legal resources, but also people who, frankly, get laid off from a AAA company, and maybe they need legal resources to help them.
Yes, I have been lucky in that I personally have not had that kind of problem, but naming no names, I have known people who either needed that desperately or had to go it alone, and it's very difficult. I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge, and so, I mean, I know, I've had many conversations about unionization both before and after I left the IGA, and I just feel that I think we're at that inflection point,
Yes.
kind of where Hollywood was in the 30s and 40s of the 20th century, where there was a time where Hollywood was absolutely, completely dominated by studios. I mean, they gave you the marching orders. The actors had no power. Basically, they were sort of enslaved to the studio system, but that all broke apart, and then unions rose, and so basically, we saw the strength of talent over management. And I think we are currently at that very same point in the game industry. We're about 100 years, after the film industry or so, maybe 80 years. But I think we're at that very point right now where it's time for talent to take the reins and basically have more control over their destiny.
Yeah, and we have an industry that's laid out now to allow for that. Like, gone are the days when you had to physically print every game. There's nothing stopping any of us here in chat from selling 1 million copies. There's no logistics to selling 1 million copies of your game, and I like that.
Right.
The other thing that I would add, and again, I don't need anyone else to agree with me here, this is a Will opinion, but where the ESA could have been something very powerful and something very positive, they have been, at best, a limp noodle, and at worst, like a fossilized piece of poo. Very heavy and very unsanitary.
Well, let's be clear about one thing. Trade associations like the one primary role, and their role is the interface between the industry in their locale, which is in their country,
Yeah.
with the local government, and so that role, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's the same all around the world. There's the organization called Game that's in Germany. They do the same thing. There's all these, there's Yuki in the UK. There's a lot of other.
I guess then maybe my opinion of the ESA comes from my interactions with Yuki, which takes more of a direct, hands-on approach to bridging the gap, or breaching the fence, however you want to say it. But their interactions between industry and government, their interactions between like industry and non-industry, are really, really positive. And
yeah,
I don't want to brag about my home country, but they have bunting at their GDC stand, actual bunting.
Yes, they do. I mean, let's face it, Yuki is awesome. I know Joe really well. I love Yuki, but at the same time, one thing, there are times when trade associations can be beneficial Like in our case in the U.S., the ESA, they were the ones championing the case in the Supreme Court in 2011, which secured games being a First Amendment right. So that was their victory. That was something that the ESA was pushing in fighting back against the law that was started by Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor of California. He was pushing for games to be regulated, and the ESA pushed back on that. It went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court ruled. Not only did they say that there was no connection that they could see between games and violence, which was a key part of their ruling, but they also ruled that games are protected free speech. So for the United States, that was a major milestone that was secured by the ESA. So that was great. When that kind of stuff happens, that's a really powerful thing to have happen. But in terms of like helping to promote games as an art form and all these other things, they haven't really done a whole lot.
So, well then, I retract my mean comments about them being a fossilized piece of poo, but it's...
Well, no, I think a lot of trade associations deserve a certain degree of criticism because their function is limited. And I guess I think that's the important thing to understand. Their main function is more focused and limited than most.
The backing track in your current location is hilarious. I just of all the time to stop playing Call Me Al.
Yeah, sorry.
That's utterly brilliant. So Digital Seahorse brings up an interesting point, and this is probably the point where I'm not going to say that my opinion is the correct one, but the voice actors strike that happened earlier recently, where I felt like too many elements were bundled together for an effective... So, for those that don't know, I believe it was last year it ended, but the Voice Actors Guild? Voice Actors House? I don't know. Whatever a gaggle of voice actors is called.
Right.
They went on strike partially for better conditions in video games, but also for a cut of revenue from performances. And I felt that started... That caused far more problems for discussion than it helped. Yes, there were a lot of situations where voice actors were being put into some pretty heinous situations. They were being treated in some situations a lot like fight performers and things like that. So they were being put in situations where being like thrown around on harnesses and were having to work some pretty brutal hours doing some very difficult voice work without, water and tea and stuff like that, which is fine. However, their push for a cut of revenue really undermined a lot of pushes for unions in the games industry because of all the individuals who needed rev share or needed representation in that regards. Voice actors were not even in the top 10. And
right.
Because you can remove a voice actor from a project and still have a functioning project. You can't. You remove a few engine coders and suddenly, there's no game at all.
Well, it's the important thing about the SAG-AFTRA strike with the voice actors is that it was highlighting the issues around organized labor and how can this serve game developers or people involved with game creation in some way. Voice actors, they are certainly a part of it. They're a big part of the creative process, but there's a lot of the people who are also big parts of the creative process. So it was a little frustrating, or more than a little frustrating, I think, for a lot of people in the industry, see the voice actors kind of attention. Everyone else has absolutely zero representation.
Yeah.
And so I think the benefit of having the SAG-AFTRA strike was actually raising awareness again on the game industry side that, hey, maybe it's time that we have that same kind of representation.
Yeah, and I would like to see that. On the one hand, I worry because at least the professions that I've done don't fall under traditional game development, so whether or not an individual like me would be covered by these is another matter entirely. But I feel like that particular strike, while it raised a lovely amount of awareness for it being a thing, it actually set things back more than it helped. And again, I'm not saying that this is the correct opinion, this was my personal one. I've seen too many mediocre voice actors destroy projects, as opposed to the very rare instances where a good voice actor, elevates a title. Like, Sorry. So this is my bugbear, and as I said, I don't expect anyone to agree with me on this one.
Well, no, I think that's a valid point. And I think the other thing that we have to understand is one of the things that, well, is a lot of developers, a lot of game creators thinking, well, now I need to join a Hollywood. But, I caution strongly against that, because when I was running the IGDA, I had 3 different Hollywood approach about basically proselytizing for members within the IGDA, and I flat out said, no, I'm not going to allow it. And it's not because I'm anti-union. I'm definitely not. I'm definitely for it, of course. But I don't want to see game developers, Hollywood. Frankly, I don't think they give a shit about games as an art form or developers necessarily. All they want is the membership. I mean, by example, think about something like Producer Guild of America.
Well, so, I mean, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I get the gist that you were putting forward is that, they're not looking to protect our medium or our people. They're looking to make money from membership fees.
Well, yeah, and my point is that, like, if you take something like the Producers Guild of America, do you ever think that even a famous game producer like Will Wright or Sid Meier, they will never have the same status of producers like Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg?
Yes.
They will never have that status in that guild. So why would you join? I mean, game developers will always be second-class citizens in a Hollywood union. That's why I think we need our own.
Yeah, and it would be lovely to see it form. Some of the shenanigans that has gone down this year, like... I know I keep going back to it, but it was just the ArenaNet thing was so fucking egregious. I want to drag them over the coals for this one, because a hate mob attacked one of their own, and instead of backing up their own staff member, they just fired him and chucked him out to the wolves. They told this, very I'm gonna say it, anti-women hate mob that, you know what, you are more important than our staff, and we will listen to you over our own people. And
well, it's not, yeah.
I'm still raging, Kate. I'm still raging.
Well, it's worth raging about. I mean, Riot just did a similar thing. They ejected somebody out the airlock because of that. And frankly, I mean, the whole issue is really frustrating because it shows a tremendous amount of hypocrisy in this industry. Because I'll give you an example. So back early last year is when Trump announced his Muslim ban, what they were calling the Muslim ban on immigration in the United States.
Yep.
And a lot of people were super pissed off about it, as I was. Well, I happened to be in Egypt when that ban was announced. And then I went on to Istanbul right after that. So that was an interesting perspective. But my point is that there were many people in the game industry at the corporate executive level who spoke out against it. Even like Ted Price and Insomniac did like a corporate video saying, hey, look at all these great immigrants from Muslim countries, and we really love them being here, and they really support our game development. And so I thought that was awesome. It was really cool to see that kind of display. But then go rewind a couple, 2 or 3 years earlier than that, and I'm like, so I did a post about this on Facebook, and I was really angry because I'm like, where the fuck were you people during Gamergate? Yes. Why didn't you show that same level of leadership when women in your companies were being harassed, verbally attacked, death threats against us for 2 fucking years, and you guys said absolutely nothing?
Yeah.
I mean, there was very few people in the industry who spoke up. I mean, I applaud people like Mike Morheim of Blizzard, because at BlizzCon 2014, he actually spoke out against it when he opened BlizzCon in his opening speech. That was a rare kind of leadership at that time. But for the most part, the industry remained absolutely silent. And so just ridiculous hypocrisy that we're seeing.
Yeah. Obviously, it was, previous companies, previous studios. So I can't comment on my involvement or lack of involvement because of reasons, but I got to have a point with Zoe Quinn, not this GDC, the one before, and just, it doesn't make up for it, but I got to say I'm sorry. Like a lot of people, especially a lot of like low-level individuals who are eyeballs deep in like community and front-facing stuff, we saw immediately what was happening. One of the things that infuriated me was that you could literally look at the Gamergate playbook that went round, the how to harass individuals, how to contact studios, what level of management to email your complaints to get the most amount of reactions. Like, these were resources that were available at the time, and no one was listening. And yeah, I still lament my lack of action, and at least now I'm on this side, I can use what little of a platform I have to raise these issues, to talk about them, to not let them disappear under a rock, because it was infuriating. Although, in a really dark way, if you want to see one of the best written messaging documents, the Gamergate playbook is ridiculously well made. Like, it was not I'm not telling you anything you don't know, Kate, because you were on the feckin' receiving end of this, but the targeted harassment was all orchestrated and designed. The language, the messaging, all of this was put together in a document which was, made available to Gamergate scumbags pretty much from the initial attack of Zoe outwards. And yeah, it's a scary level of competent writing. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was very orchestrated. I mean, I was in touch frequently with the FBI during the entire time. The FBI told me they knew exactly who the core group was. They actually knew who the real names were. They had all this, but the problem is that they could not really take much action, because it kind of goes back to my earlier comment that the laws as they currently exist, they don't help law enforcement actually deal with online threats, harassment. Yes. Like, I showed them, for example, a bunch of tweets and threats against me, and I said, if somebody said this to my face on the street, you could arrest them, right? They say, well, yeah, that would be a threat, in person. But if they say it on Twitter, it could be satire, it could be humor, it could be free speech, and I'm like, that's complete and utter bullshit. But, they were very sympathetic. They said, look, we understand how frustrated you are, but our job is to only enforce the laws as they exist, not to write them. Yeah. And as much as I would love them to be able to go around those individuals' houses and stick a nightstick up one of their varying orifices, as we've currently seen in both the UK and US, maybe let's not give those agencies superpowers right now. Let's maybe not do that. Yeah, and to Ghost's point in chat, I mean, yeah, this is a very common problem. We see it all the time. Laws have always lagged behind technology. And I guess the only thing, or one of the key problems in the area, is that technology continues to change very rapidly and faster and faster. So it's actually the gap between the law and technology, I think, my viewers. So, I mean, I think, because breaking up a little bit there, but I think what you were saying is it's the gap between the law and technology is something that has existed for a while. And Sagathan was pointing out, while that's depressing to hear, Simon and Garfunkel's playing in the background once again, so excellent backing track. Yeah, I couldn't agree. I had the pleasure of actually seeing Garfunkel perform in Amsterdam. Oh, that's so cool. It's awesome. I'm really bad for going to gigs. If it's not at like an event that I'm already going to, I'm really bad about it. But that is probably why I spend like 50% of PAX raving out and 50% of PAX talking to everyone ever. Yeah, of course. Well, I'm not saying that we want to be rid of you anytime soon. I've had your company for a couple hours, and you're obviously welcome to stay as long as you'd like. So what I thought I'd do is, as we're getting to the 2-hour mark, you lovely folks, if you've got any more questions for Kate, if you've got any things that you want us to chat or chill and ill on, now is the time to throw them in. Yeah, because I should get going in about 10 minutes. So yeah, I'm happy to answer. And while the questions are coming in, I also want to say that, it's thanks to work of people like yourself that we are seeing more diverse representation in our games, in our people. We're so far from the top of the mountain in where we need to be, but it's better. And I like that. There has been a demonstrable change in how much representation that we have seen over the last 10 years. And you have played a massive part in that, so thank you, yo. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Rhymes and Moose is throwing, does Kate have any thought on what sort of structure a game dev union should take? and what sort of agreements it should be aiming for? Oh yeah, just a nice, easy question. I told you Rhymes with Moose was good.
So a couple of, to respond to that. So to Ghost's comment right there, I think we're starting a game dev union. It's going to have to be started in different countries. There can be no international way that the laws work from country to country. We saw, like in France last year, the STJV started, which is a game developer union in France.
Ooh,
But then, so they got started. It's a small union, but it's a start. I do think that we can create a union that has the same identity, but it has to be started locally in every case. So it has to be started in the U.S. and elsewhere, UK, U.S., Germany, et cetera, but it can all still have the same.
Well, yeah, and I think, what I would hope is that, individuals would be able to join different unions depending on the country where their studio is based. But you're right, because in terms of like working conditions, benefits, things like that, those are so drastically different. Like, and this is not a comment or a criticism on the US as a whole, but you'll need to get yourself like some medicals just as a baseline. Like the amount of people I know who've had to pay out their eyes for RSI and their hands breaking from working too much over a tablet. Like, I dread to think what that would cost out here in the US.
Well, that's the part of the thing. One of the things I was going to say about where a union started, I actually think that culturally speaking, an impact from a PR and cultural perspective of the industry, having a union start first in the United States would have a massive message to send. Because getting a union started in the United States is not easy. No. There's a lot of political and social pushback on the concept. Whereas starting a union in France, hey, everyone starts a union in France. It's what you do there.
It's just
I mean, it's not. It doesn't have the same kind of cultural faux pas or sensitivity as it does in the U.S. So
yeah.
Plus the fact, like what others have said, is like Europe, generally speaking, has a lot of really strong labor protection laws that already help the developers. That doesn't mean you don't need.
Yes.
That you already have protections and benefits in place that we in the U.S. do not have at all. So I think.
Plus, no matter how old or young the group of individuals discussing unions in the UK, you can't help but bring up Thatcher, and then everybody's there was see some heated opinions come out then.
Oh yeah. Well, and then, into the other question about what kind of structure should we have as a union. Well, my personal feeling on that is that we need a structure that is not job specific. I think that if we had a programmers union and a writers union and an artist union, all that, I don't think that's the way to go for the game industry, because we are so technology dependent. Our jobs change very frequently.
Yeah.
Yes, there will always be narrative designers. There will always be programmers. So these are set jobs that are not going to go away, but these jobs change frequently depending on the technology. And I'll give you an example. So now with VR, what we're seeing in the VR space, people creating VR games, we're seeing this melding of narrative design and environmental design and environmental art.
Yeah.
So in the traditional AAA space, those are completely different jobs done by complete skill sets. But now in VR, we're seeing a narrative designer, they absolutely must understand and have some skill around environmental design and vice versa, because the two are so intertwined.
Yeah.
You cannot do one without the other in the VR space. And so I think that's like a job type that's sort of emerging with the technology. So, we need a union that can be flexible for that kind of occurrence.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm going to agree with you because, my contributions to the games industry have been non-standard. Like, I have, yeah. But the thing is, you could put my professions in other guilds, other unions, but it would not be nearly as applicable because I don't think all of my skill sets would translate to another industry, even though on paper it's the same. So I'm down. I know that's selfish, but a union starts with you.
There you go. Oh, nicely done. Nicely done.
You can have that for free. Like, I'm not even charging. You're a guest on my show. It's complimentary, terrible taglines.
Yeah, well, it's like when people say there's no I in team, but yeah, there is me. There's me though.
Yeah. Sorry. You know what? I'm not going to tell that joke because it is not Twitch safe. But yeah. There's no I in team, but there's a U in oh boy. So just jumping back into Greenfire's got snacks. Well done. A lot of people talking about Canadian and French unions, which is all good. Vive la Révolution. Zeragonos was saying, time for the classic question. What can we do to help make these changes happen? If we want to support a union, Kate, how can we, as, not necessarily loud gingers on Twitch, but how can we, just as individuals, help move this process forward?
Well, I think first and foremost, everyone has to give a shit and care. And I don't say that lightly. I'm serious. I mean, people need to care to the point that they're willing to actually do something about it and stand up, take a place, figure out what's my role in this. You can also go in, go look at the Game Workers Unite site, which I just posted there in chat.
Yes, I'll bring that up. Yeah. Wait, no, hang on. Please continue. Sorry, I was waffling whilst bringing things up.
But it's important. It's important to care enough to be willing to do something. So, like Game Workers Unite, forming chapters all around the world, by city, by whatever kind of locale. So get involved. There might already be a chapter in your area, so why not get involved with them? And we all talk on Discord. There's all kinds of channels on Discord. Yeah. So get on there, see what's happening locally, what can you do locally. A lot of what's gonna take eventually, because the way that unions get started, usually it's a group at a specific company who decides, like, we're going to unionize at this company, and frankly, that's usually a large company. I don't see any advantage to like a 5-person indie company unionizing. There would be no point in that. But
you get sweet badges, but
well, yeah, you get nice badges, but the important thing is to figure out what can you do to change the corner of the world that you live in. So I talk a lot in my advocacy lectures about having righteous rage, as I call it. A lot of us are angry about a lot of things. Not enough to be angry. You have to focus that anger.
Find your righteous rage.
Yeah, so righteous rage to me is about being angry for the right reason and being willing to do something about it. Basically for me, it's a response to justice. So when I see Telltale or some of these other companies going on, that is a gross injustice that needs to be fixed. Can a union fix that? Well, I think it's not going to fix everything. It can certainly help mitigate and prevent some of this kind of stuff from happening.
Heck yes.
And so basically, what I'm basically saying is educate yourself on what you could do locally, and basically find an issue. What's that thing that really pisses you off? It could be something in your current workplace. It could be something in the industry in general. The biggest problem I see is when developers think they're going to change the whole world, but guess what? You're not. I mean, what you can change is your corner of it, though.
Yeah.
And if every one of us is working on our own little corner of the world to change, we can actually change everything collectively better. And so, basically define your problem and then actually address it.
So how long have we got you for? Have you got time for one more question?
Yes, I'll take one more question, then I really got to run.
Okay, so just because this one's near and dear to my heart, and Rhymes and Moose was asking thoughts on how unions could protect front-facing staff members from being targeted or harassed.
That's a fantastic question. Now, I think that's exactly where you help, because what we need is some kind of arbitration that exists for creating a collective bargaining agreement with a company on laying the ground rules for how staff at a company are going to engage on social media, what their responsibilities are, what the company's responsibilities are to those employees, what the company is going to do to help protect them, All of those rules of engagement for social media and the employees, whether they're doing it on their company time or doing it on their own time, on their own accounts, all that stuff has to be laid out in a very clear, explicit rules of engagement kind of document, which that's basically what collective bargaining is, which tends to be the business of unions. And so I think a union could totally help in, bringing a company and workers together, like bring, for example, all the community managers who deal with the public for the company, bring them together with management, work out exactly what rules of engagement for social media.
Yeah.
And what the consequences are on both sides, not just on the employees, but on the company as well.
Yeah, and I think it's something that the good thing about the community managers is we all talk. We're very good at keeping in contact with each other. Shocking, I know. And yeah, I think a standardized rules of engagement would be fine. Because, yeah, what ArenaNet didn't just hurt ArenaNet, it hurt the industry. It set a precedent which we're all suffering from. And it would be willfully ignorant to say otherwise.
No, I totally agree. What we're also seeing with Telltale, what they did just hurt the Telltale employees. I mean, obviously they're the ones most directly impacted by this, but we as an industry are also reeling from what has happened, because it's giving a lot of people a wake-up call that now is the time to step up, change this shit, and not let it happen again.
Yeah.
And that means holding employers accountable, and the only way to hold them accountable is by having the employees organized in fashion.
Okie dokie. Well, as we have hit the 2-hour mark, I'm just going to do a quick plug of Geography and a quick plug of Take This. And I think I already posted Game Advocacy, but I'm going to throw that in there everywhere. This is a whole bunch of projects that Kate has been working on, and they are all worth your time to have a read up on. Kate, all I can say is thank you so much for coming on today. This has been heckin' marvellous.
No, absolutely. I'm glad I had the time, and thank you so much for asking me. And if anyone else has questions to follow up, you know how to find me on Twitter or wherever. Feel free to ask me or send me an email.
Actually, let me pull up your Twitters as well, because that is a good place to ask questions. Assuming it hasn't logged me out. No, we're good.
I'm happy to. People ask me job.
We might have, unfortunately, you might have just been broken up a little bit. So wherever you are jetting off to in the world next, I hope you have a most splendid time. And well, not for at least a while, but maybe in the post TwitchCon world, we'd love to have you back again if you've got time.
There we go. Unmute. Yes. No. Thank you very much. I would love to come back and talk again with you all. It was really fun.
Well, thank you kindly. So yes, once again, huge thank you to Kate Edwards for being an industry badass and taking the time to hang out with us today. Right, you lovely, lovely folks. I'm just going to jump out of this call. Right. I desperately need a cup of tea and a bathroom break, and then so I've still got my hand busted. So we're going to work out what Will can play with a combination of painkillers and ice, and go from there. Because no amount of stupid post-drinking industry is going to stop me, yo. I'm going to try and do some more Salt and Sanctuary, and if that doesn't work... Oh, yeah, so Kika and other people's. I don't know if you can see it. My hand's a little bit swollen, comparable to my other noodly one. Yesterday it looked like William Birkin's eyeball. I injured it while going home drunk the other night because I'm stupid. So where's my stuff? God damn it, Mr. B. So I'm going to quickly nip to the bathroom, grab myself a fresh cuppa, and return with you all in just a second. Once again, huge thank you to Kate for being a fecking legend. And I'll be back with you ever so shortly. Don't go anywhere. We've got games. We can talk even more about the things we were discussing. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I gotta pee. It's going to be great. Wait, no, hang on. That came out wrong.
This beat off the frisbee got me skipping like a hippie, got me tripping like a whiskey, got me whizzing like a frisbee, which is quite ironic. It fires my sonics, quite the nicest tonic. Do you like my bonnet. You can try if you promise to have a little dance. Maybe just a wiggle, well, isn't it a giggle if we get a little silly? Have a kiss and grab a tipple. Unguided missiles on a head-on collision. There is no division on the dance floor. Prophet Mr. Frisbee, what more could you ask for? Not so much hardcore as hard not to dance for. Shift your lovely ass, spin around like parkour. There is no division, so demand more. Prophet Mr. Frisbee, what more could you ask for? And we're here for a laugh. So whenever you hear this, charge for the dance floor. No time to breathe, where are you going? No time to leave. We're in it for the long haul, strong tall songs, all a little bit wrong, all delivered by Paul. I mean Prof the steam, Prof the I have a dream, Prof the lots of tea off his tree, really nice knees, Prof. He's on and ease off, jog on or leave off, or join in and reach for the breeze. I keep steam hot. There is no division on the dance floor. Prophet Mr. Frisbee, what more could you ask for? Not so much hardcore as hard not to dance for. Shift your lovely ass, spin around like parkour. There is no division, so demand more. Prophet Mr. Frisbee, what more could you ask for? And we're here for a laugh. So whenever you hear this, charge for the dance floor. Skip to my loo, take a trip to the zoo with the tigers and lions and pigs and gnu's. My wildlife sounds like a pitch for a new sci-fi flick. Bring it clicks, bring it crew. Sick of listening to spitters who give you the blues. A different kind of rapper who listens to you. Oh, lyrics I provide are sticking like glue. Live shows get 5-star spiffing reviews. Bring a new type of thing or a fresh point of view. I don't care if it's true, I just care that it's you. Switch, pitch and diction, fictional lives. Twist, skip, jive as Frisbee provides. The Mr. and Professor and we're all the way live. All in together and we're all on your side. Let's slide and collide while there's time for fun. Cause it's all just a ride till our time is done. There is no division on the dance floor. Prophet Mr. Frisbee, what more could you ask for? Not so much hardcore as hard not to dance for. Shift your lovely ass, spin around like parkour. There is no division, so demand more. Prophet Mr. Frisbee, what more could you ask for? And we're here for a laugh. So whenever you hear this, charge for the dance floor.
Oh, you filthy urchins. Get off me, low-down, dirty scallywags. Get off my coattails, you filthy sea cucumbers. Step back and watch a professional at work. Hello.
I get around, circumnavigate. I see clown act to make better badger bait. They want it now, but they've had to wait. When Prof stands on stage, they're a tad afraid. They're right to be, there's none like me. Prof L take a loss, unlikely. I take umbrage, I'm disgusted. Sorry, dear boy, you don't cut the mustard.
No.
Before you think about rhyming, you need breath control, right voice, tight timing. Before chap hop or get to nerdcore, have respect for the hip hop you've heard before. Not just a silly suit and amusing hat. Although it doesn't hurt, I leave you to choose that. You need to go back to the lab to practice or get slapped quick by the king of the chaps.
You're a scallywag, a dirty urchin. Please step back when real chaps are working. Sit down, listen up, I don't mean to be rude. Take a letter from your betters, mind your P's and Q's. You're a scallywag, an unworthy gherkin. Please step back when real chaps are working. Sit yourself down, what you need to do is take a letter from your betters, mind your P's and Q's.
I get around, I get around, I get around, circumnavigate. I get around, circumnavigate. I see clown act to make better badger bait. To the trolls of the tryhards, entitled diehard snobs, I find hard to stop when my guard is off. And I start to find myself trapped at a show. I know you do mean well, and I love to chat, something I do well. But you want to talk at length, oh God, do tell. I just got off stage, I might need a breather. Give me a few feet, my little eager beaver. Don't be rude, don't be that dude that spews and sprays shoes with your old food. It's humid and you've had too much brew. Let's move on. What you've got to do, 99% that I meant are so fresh. So maybe go home, it might be for the best. Step off, have a dance, have a lark, have a laugh. Cause when you stop talking, the party can start.
You're a scallywag, a dirty urchin. Please step back when real chaps are working. Sit down, listen up, I don't mean to be rude. Take a letter from your betters.